Basically look at Shasta County, and again, continuing good news. We're doing much better than most in the state. Unemployment, just as a reminder, has dropped from 17.5 4 years ago, and is now down around 10. This is a big shift, and it's a lot more than much of the rural part of the state. On top of that, we've seen an almost 14% increase on the manufacturing side. Milken Institute this last year put us at one of 7 small cities in California that made the national list for performing cities, which is good. I mean, when you think of this close to 150 small cities in this state, we were one of the 7 that made it on the list. We're doing much, much better than most. On the same note, unfortunately, the weakness that we have in the Milken study was our wage levels. A lot of the jobs we're creating are in the service and retail industry and not in the manufacturing technology areas where we can get higher paying jobs. So we have to maintain the focus on that side. Almost all our manufacturers report this year they will be hiring in this next year coming up, so we're expanding on that end of it. And we're actually reaching a point where we're running out of qualified employees. We've actually got jobs open right now that we can't find qualified people to come into manufacturing and full manufacturing positions. Part of this is the change in the manufacturing itself, the additional training and technology involved. Quick sampling of things we've been working on. I'm just going to run over these very quickly. We've got airline attraction, Stillwater Business Park, regional marketing, and startup development. So the first one on airline attraction. This is one you've probably heard a little bit about, but we've met over the last year with 5 different airlines. For a community meet with 5 airlines in 1 year is almost a record. We met with United, Delta, American, SkyWest, and Alaskan, all in 1 year. The only reason this happened was because of the business community stepping up and pledging $1.2 million, of which half is in a fund. That's allowed us to open the door and start a communication with these airlines on trying to get an LA connection and LA service. The EDC's role on this team, in this piece, has been to lay out the changes in the traveling business community in this market in the last 3 years. And there's been some huge changes. We've got Bethel Church, which is coming, which is spending almost $3 million a year on travel. Just one organization. They bring 10,000 people into this community every year. That didn't exist 4 years ago in that scale of numbers. We had the Fly Shop that last year booked 3,000 rooms in Shasta County, and even in the, well, I shouldn't say even, including the eastern part of the county, all over the county. We have CH2M Hill, which has expanded 20% in the last year. A lot of their travel is to Southern California. We have Shasta Regional Medical Center, now owned by a parent company in Southern California. Our tourist board has got alongside us, and we can expand into Southern California. They've built an entire marketing program to go with it. So the whole piece of this that the EDC has been playing in terms of making this presentation to the airlines. Bottom line, it depends on 5 things. Building a reliable business model for the airlines. And on that piece, we've had good data, we've been able to demonstrate that and make it work. Second part, outperforming other communities. Not quite as easy as it may seem. Our main opposition is Eureka. And when you look at the 2 markets, you kind of go, how could Eureka even be competitive with us? The difference is that 97% of their flying public goes through their airport. We have a 13% capture rate. Most of ours go to Sacramento and San Francisco to get their flights. So when an airline's looking at us, they can go to one airport, all they've got to do is fill 100 seats. If they can do that and they're sitting there, it's more attractive than trying to pull people back from other markets back to ours to fill their aircraft. Again, it's something we can overcome, and as we're growing, we're looking stronger at that part of it. Aircraft availability, the airlines are doing less and less small aircraft. They're still there. We're actually moving to a larger aircraft for this routing. Gate availability in LAX, and of course LAX is going through a remodel right now, so we just have to work through that portion of it. And the latest one is pilot availability. FAA has just changed their training rules, which is causing a shortage of pilots now for the smaller airlines. So these are the things that we've got to overcome going into it. So prediction, I think we're looking at 50-50 that we'll see something this year. I think in the next 12 months looks good. We have a couple of airlines that are looking at us very hard. We've seen service come into a couple of smaller towns around us. I think we're in line for it. Hopefully we're going to see it. Unfortunately, the business community stepped up at a meeting 2 weeks ago and have said they want to leave the funds in there and give it another year. So we're going to extend that. In the meantime, we'll maintain those relationships with the airlines and see what we can do over that period of time. Next one is Stillwater Business Park. the City of Reading asked us to take over managing the marketing of Stillwater Business Park. With that, we went out and bought in Voigt Real Estate Services out of Southern California with an office in Sacramento. We appreciate Voigt in that they're looking further afield in terms of how the business park can be used. The bad part is we don't have anybody in Stillwater Business Park. The good part is we don't have anybody in Stillwater Business Park. And when you think back to the original start of Stillwater Business Park, we had a very large, heavy paper products company looking at Stillwater Business Park. Had that come into the park 5, 6, 7 years ago, when they originally wanted to and everything stayed on the time frame if the economy hadn't changed, that would have stamped the park into what it was going to become from that point on. And when you look at what's happened within the state of California in that time, that could have been very detrimental long-term for us. Now we have a park that can be a research park, can be an education facility, can go into a lot of different uses that's still wide open. And with the change in California, it's probably high probability that one of those other uses will become what the park becomes, which will give us a much longer term return and I think an easier park to recruit to when we get that first one in place. Basically, we've seen 3 site visits since Voigt has been doing it. We've got 2 more in the works that we're probably going to see in the next month. Activity has definitely picked up with them being involved and with the change in the economy. So things are definitely happening in that part of it. The last thing I just say is patience. Obviously, when we get somebody, it's a long-term process, and it's probably going to be a 2-year due diligence, or at least before we see somebody in there. So it's going to take some time, and please be patient with us on that part of it. Next one is marketing. In the second part of this year, we've changed. We've stepped up our marketing. We had some extra dollars in the budget, focusing on California. And we're going after several areas. First one is recreational manufacturing. We currently manufacture boats, paddleboards, water skis, search and rescue harness, bicycles. These things are all made here. They can use this region for doing their R&D. They're using the natural resources of the industry for building their business. That's the type of companies we're trying to cluster around. Second one is technology, and we found a nice niche in technology for this area. We don't have engineering level students that we can put into companies for R&D, but we have a lot of tech level that have come in through Bethel and through Simpson University. So what we've done is we've tapped into Silicon Valley. We've got a nice flow going on now. We've actually got our 5th company that's coming up, and we're getting back office pieces from Silicon Valley. These are in marketing. These are in tech support. These are in customer service. And we're getting pieces that are coming up of startup companies, and often these are well-funded 2- or 3-year-old companies, but they need to farm out a back office piece. We're getting them coming in with 1 or 2, bring them up here, and we've got excellent labor force that fits nicely into this, where they can grow from there, and I'll expand on that in just a moment. Small aviation, again with our airport, with our pilot training, with helicopter training. We have more flight days than most other airports. We have capacity at the airport. So this is another place that we're focusing on trying to build. And finally, medical device and food processing, both which fit well into this area. Startup pitch breakfast. Give you a quick one here. This is where we bring young companies. Dave has been along to one, and we put them in front of mentors in the area. Good example is a little company called Limelight. A great product, software product that came before us 9 months ago. The inventors in the room chewed them up, spat them out. Basically said, your model is completely wrong. You've got a good idea, but your business model is wrong. Last night we looked at that company, and he's got a board of directors, an excellent 4 people working for that company, rebuilt it, reorganized it, and I think this is going to be a potential very strong startup for this area. And again, it was done by bringing mentors in to help this person build this company and doing this locally. Beer and Bites, this is our social side. This industry is heavy exchange. A lot of exchange goes on between them. It's a good example. We have a little company called Firewalk that's in GPS, that's basically a world leader in GPS development. We have air cover and drone development. Both met at Beer and Bites, and now they're doing research work up on the side of Mount Shasta using drones to fly, doing firework using GPS. Advanced technology, and it's coming right out of this region with 2 companies in this region coming together to do the work. I mean, it gives me chills to think of this kind of stuff going on. It didn't even exist here 4 or 5 years ago. We wouldn't have dreamed of it. Accelerator, we're in the process of looking at building an incubator locally right now. We have 4 incubation spaces. We're just starting the process of trying to bring these together into a centralized incubation space. And the reason is I use a company called Axion. They came to town about 9 months ago. They hired 4 local people as their key people here. There's another back office piece. Went into an incubator and was supposed to be there for 12 months. 6 months later, they had to move out. They'd outgrown it. They're now up to 25 people. These are people earning $40,000, $60,000 a year jobs. Good jobs that are being created right here by pulling a piece out of Silicon Valley, putting the resources around it, and growing it right here. So very quickly, the results, this is the final slide. As we started on this 2 years ago, we were looking to try and double our sector from 0.8 billion to 1.6. And to do that, we had to create 277 jobs annually using the multiplier that we use for industrial jobs. I'm glad to say that we're on target again for this year. I can't give you an exact number because the EDD measures those numbers and they come from a lot of different sources, but we know that we're well ahead, and we may have even doubled it, I don't know, but we're well ahead in terms of job creation, in terms of building that sector to the target that we want it to be in 10 years. So with that ends my presentation, unless we have any questions.
Questions from the board? Supervisor Keel.
Mr. Lascelles, thank you for the presentation this morning. I particularly appreciate your concentration on results of the activities. I have a couple of questions. First of all, could you expand on the relationship between our economic viability and success and airline attraction?
Absolutely. Every day we miss out on companies coming to this area because we don't have airline access to it. We need 2 connections. One to Silicon Valley, that we're going to continue to grow in that market. For example, Axion is here, the company I mentioned earlier, sends a private plane up here 3 to 4 times a week. That's how much traffic is building. LA, all our business people need access to LA, and it's costing them thousands of dollars every year in terms of having to send people through Sacramento or miss flights through San Francisco or other things. It's absolutely related to our economic growth. I hope that answers your question.
Second question. As you know, there is a great deal of community angst associated with the lack of progress out at Stillwater.
Yes.
In your mind, during this next 2 to 5 year period that you referred to, are there any other alternate uses of that property pending the development of the property for what it was intended?
There's possibly other uses. In reality, are they significant? Are they going to give any major return or something on that end? Probably not particular. I mean, the reality is we made an investment, and it's a usually a business park takes 20 years to develop. And there's a lot of stories out there of business parks that have started and gone for 5, 6, we had one in the paper last year, 10 years without anything in it. But when they happen, then they take on a direction based on the first one in there, they build around that, and it has a significant impact on the economy. I think we made an excellent decision when we did it. I think, unfortunately, timing has been against it when we opened it. But we have it in place now, and other communities are going to be looking back, I believe, in 5 to 10 years, wishing they had a park, because if they have to face what we went through to do a park, it's not going to happen. And it's going to give us a significant advantage at that time. But it's going to take some time.
Final question. What can we, as a board, as a county, do to assist you in attracting businesses to Shasta County or expanding businesses?
The biggest thing we can do is get together and be on the same team. So when a company comes in and I call you, and you're all very responsive to this already, to be available to meet with those companies. I had a call yesterday from a company that's coming from the Midwest. Oddly enough, it's coming here because they create a product they sell to Tesla. And they're looking at 3 states, it's ourselves, Oregon and Nevada. Frankly, it's going to be an uphill battle. Anytime we have to fight with Oregon and Nevada, there's a lot of state incentives and the others that we are unable to offer. But we're in the fight, and we'll be doing the very best we can with it. your support in this, whether it's just in person, whether it's, and often it's just letting them know that we want them here. We can't overcome the tax issues, we can't overcome some of the others, but we do have cheap water, cheap electricity, an excellent labor force, and if we have a political desire to see them there, that has a real bearing on it. That would be an excellent piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Modi, followed by Supervisor Giacomini.
Thank you, Chair Ball. I just wanted one comment. I found it interesting you talked about these smaller companies that have come here or changed their formats and different things to start up and come here. And yet, when I look at the EDC, you and your board have done the same thing, and I really appreciate that. You've taken a model that was probably stagnant 10 years ago and said, you know what, let's look what we're doing and how we do it, how we present ourselves, how we sell our community. And even in the last couple of years, you continue to tweak it as you need to find other avenues to make our community successful. So I just want to hats off to you and your board members, all of them, for the effort that they do, that you continue to work on promoting our community in the best way possible.
Thank you very much, and again, the credit goes to the board. They're the ones that have to make the tough decisions and get behind and endorse it, and they have to carry it back to their people in the community. And so they're the ones that got behind it and supported it. Again, I will say at the same time, it's not a difficult decision. We can't keep fighting to be an old California. Those days have gone by, and as easier as they were, so that's the wrong terminology, but they were certainly much easier times. But today we're in a very competitive global world, and we have to recognize that and get global ourselves and become part of it. Fortunately with technology, we can do it. We've got some gaps to fill in, but we've got to work on those, and we can do it.
Well, I think the EDC has become very dynamic, and I think that's very important to all of us, so thank you to all of you for doing that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Giacomini.
Thank you, Chair Hall. Thank you, Mark, for the presentation very much. And I would echo what Supervisor Modi just said. I think you guys have been very dynamic. One question you kind of touched on a little bit is the lack of those trained personnel for a certain component.
Yep.
How can we address that?
We've got to, it's the old chicken and egg piece. And unfortunately, we've had too many years without anything happening, and with shrinking economy, and so we've lost a lot of our CNC machinists, our lathe people. He said, now we need to retrain some of these, or bring them back in again. And when new technology, or for example, CNC machining is a good example. It's basically high-tech shop work. It doesn't, a new company comes in, it destabilizes our market force very quickly because we have a limited number of people that are trained to do that work. So all of a sudden, they're pulling out of other shops and making and creating difficulties on that end of it. We just need to build a bigger labor pool of these resources. But it's interesting how quickly it's happened. I mean, a year or two ago, we thought this would be 2 or 3 years before we'd ever start to have labor issues, but it's happening already with the growth.
Thank you.
All right?
I'd like to echo the thoughts expressed by my fellow supervisors. I appreciate the EDC, and you are extremely dynamic in your presentations, which leads me to my question. You presented some information here that is incredibly positive. It really shows us a complete shift from the economy that has been rocking back and forth to a positive improvement. You're getting that message out everywhere, and this is maybe a hypothetical that you can't answer, but we aren't seeing this information in the local media, and it counters all of the negative that we are hearing in every sector out there. I would love to see this information be on the front page of the newspaper. Hint, hint, Mr. Duda. But it is amazing. I've attended so many functions, and I've yet to hear this information.
This is what's going on. I absolutely agree with you. And everywhere we go, we're telling the same story. My board members are carrying out the same message. Things are changing. Again, we're at the 3% mark toward the 100% change. In the early stages of this change. But again, we can see a light of this piece, that we can see the change and where it can go and what it can build for us. Unfortunately, we have a lot of, and I've just used the term naysayers, who have just kind of made a life out of putting down this area. And it's taken on a life of its own, and it's grown, and it is out of control. And unfortunately, it hurts us. I mean, there's people that are possibly watching this board meeting today, sitting around other areas of the state, sitting around areas of the country, that may consider what we do in this area. And every message we send out from this, has an effect on how they see us and where they want to come here. It's so important. I totally agree with you, and believe me, that the more we can get this message out, the stronger we can become. It's the old story of sales. I mean, sales are not determined by how much you do or whatever. It's determined on how you see the world. That determines your success in the sales business. I come out of that industry. And if we could get this community to have that same kind of approach to it, and how they see this community, and how they see the economy of this community, and get us working on the positive things for growth, we can make dynamic change to it.
Well said. Mr. Lascelles, thank you so much for the presentation. We greatly appreciate your time and the time looking forward to being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.